Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome to the TAFO, the Truck Around and Find Out podcast, where we discuss some fun and hot topics surrounding the trucking industry, safety, community, and kind of just generally what we got going on here in northern Colorado. We're your hosts, Ryan Byers with Front Range Compliance and DOT University, and I am Keith Couch with Rush Truck Centers and Rocky Mountain Peterbilts on YouTube. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Keith. How are you doing?
Good.
We were just kind of sitting here talking about the weekend, and you came bearing gifts this morning to our office. We got our ball caps.
See.
Yeah, they look spectacular. I'm a little undecided what's my favorite. The pictures, the least favorite was that dark gray one, and once I got that baby in my hand, I was like, oh, that looks real
Yes.
sharp. So yeah, we got some new Truck Around and Find Out ball caps. Hopefully we'll be finding some folks to give those to, and we're getting us going. I also have a little news on our social media. I did get our Twitter up,
good.
and well, it's up. It's not necessarily running yet. I spent a little time just trying to find some good trucking channels. It's got some good followers, some stuff like that. So once I start getting some content, then I'm going to start making sure that I'm subscribe to some of those and really on top of when they make a post so we can get some recognition. I'm thinking through some of them, but I was going to play around with a little bit more of that today, put some stuff in there about this update or this episodes today that we're getting ready to release tomorrow and all that good stuff, and see if we can maybe get some recognition there and some possible follows. Wanted to see if we could snag a picture today, so we'll have to throw on our new ball caps and see if we can get a picture. Luke is wearing one of them today. Luke, it looks pretty good on you. Look at me again. The old Redbeard's got the ginormous head, so not every fat hat fits him. Trying to get sunglasses on him is always a challenge, in ball caps, but that looks pretty good on you there, Luke. And Keith, I didn't tell you about this because I wanted to do it live. I brought you a gift here. So
boy.
That is for you. Basically, he just got a bag, and it's got some goodies from my weekend in there. So we have my family started a tradition years ago through my grandma. I got the Italian side of my family was always prepared, and they started making sausage. So my grandma only made the original. We call it the OG, the original flavor, and I guess that would be OF, but we started calling it OG flavor just for fun. But so we moved after my grandma passed. I inherited all the sausage equipment and stuff like that. So we moved that up to Cheyenne, where Byron lives, and we call it the White Barn Sausage Company, or just kind of hobby. At least once a year we try to get together and make some. But so you got 4 different blends in there that we've got. So you've got the original linked. That's going to be the original flavor. That's an Italian sausage. Then you've got the spicy bratwurst. That's a newer recipe that we started making that we like a lot, and it is spicy, so give you a heads up on that. Then you've got the RBS, which is Ryan's breakfast blend, so you got a little package of that in there, and then there's a package of our Polish sausage. So it's not cured Polish, so just cook it like normal sausage. But anyways, so yeah, sent you some goodies, and I didn't if you weren't planning on going home to put that in the freezer, we'll drop it in the freezer for next time if you don't have time this morning. But I want to make sure you got some goodies. So yeah, we had sausage making weekend this one. I'm trying to be careful so we can avoid any smart ass comments coming to us. You might have to beat me on that one, Luke. So I'm sure we'll still get some. So yeah, we had the big sausage company this weekend, made a lot of sausage Saturday, Sunday, and that kind of thing.
Nice. We have some new stickers too.
Yeah, we did.
Thank you, Luke.
So yeah, they look pretty good. I'm so happy that we did those 3 stars like you wanted to. I think that was a great little touch after we got those made up. So yeah, we got stickers.
Kind of brings the color down
It
The
does.
whole thing.
Yeah, it was. It really does. So yeah, we had a fun weekend. So
Good.
with that, doing all
Good.
that, had to come home and get relaxed. And yesterday I put together my Blackstone. So it's been sitting in a box. I haven't had a chance to get it together. Holly got me the Traeger Blackstone for Christmas. So
Good.
I had just kind of been storing that in a box, and yesterday I sat down and put that all together with following the Traeger instructions, and I was about halfway through it, and I noticed every time you get to a certain point, it tells you what beer you're supposed to be on, and it's a 6-pack build, and I didn't drink a 6-pack, but I was about halfway through it. I was like, you know what, that's a pretty good idea. so it was a beautiful day yesterday. Still can't believe we're still in March and seeing weather like we're seeing. I mean, my trees have already got leaves out on. It's wild. I'm just completely floored, absolutely blown away. But anyways, well, for Truck Around and Find Out, Keith, I got a couple legislative updates that I wanted to talk about, and be interesting to hear your side of this. These are posted in the Federal Register, and they both came out in February, so we're just about a month into this new Federal Register. The first one is for the rear impact guards on trailers. So, as
ICC number?
Yeah. Any trailer, that's over 10,000 pounds and certain measurements from the ground and axles, of a certain distance from the rear, has to have rear impact guards in order to prevent a car from getting sucked up underneath it. And then I guess it would have been 2022, I believe it was, they went through and they added the rear impact guards to Appendix A. So in Part 396, Appendix A, that's minimum periodic inspection standards for vehicles, commercial vehicles. They added that into the periodic inspection standards. But the way they added it was it could cause a lot of conflict with the protection guards. And that kind of came up because there was a part of this rule, the DOT certification on that spec plate that needs to be on there. And they said, well, we'll just go ahead and take that off, because the way they wrote 39386, that's going to be your parts and accessories necessary for safe operation. The way they write that rule is it's got all the same details, such as that you would see in the actual regulation. Appendix A has all the same details, but they just miraculously left that part out. And the problem that you run into is, people can't just go and buy the steel and put them together, because the actual regulation says that it has to be put together with a certification, a DOT certification spec plate. Good news is that according to the Federal Register, they removed those requirements for the DOT certification. So I think that's pretty cool. So I've got the Federal Register here. We'll make sure Luke puts a copy of it up with this podcast in case anybody wants it. And basically what it says in Part 393, for parts and accessories necessary for safe operation, when you go and you read 393.86 paragraph, they're going to remove under paragraph A6. I should have my readers on so I can see what the heck I'm reading here. It's kind of throwing me for a loop.
Getting old.
Yes, I think I am, yes. It says by removing and reserving 393.86 by removing paragraph A6, and that is the specific spec plate. So they're not changing anything to the rule 100%, just removing that paragraph. So it is no longer a requirement. Okay. So that I think that's pretty good. You look at, when you read the regulation, it's broken into two parts. It talks about the old ones and the new ones. So the old ones were manufactured from, I believe, 1952. It was 1950 something until 1986, and then from 86 until present is the current bumpers we have. And there's drastic differences in the sizes between these two. So the old ones, you could just kind of put those up and weld them together, but with this new one that's got that 4-inch wide tube on the back, and with that spec plate, it really just kind of made it next to impossible for some of these shops just to get you could buy all the parts and they all came with the spec plate, but the shops, that I work with would always say, well, what are we supposed to do with that plate? Because it was never finalized. You had to put on there and you had to put your own wording, who built it, who certified it. And it was like, well, most of the shops were like, well, we don't feel comfortable saying that it's DOT certified because how does one go about getting the actual certification on it, and it was very unclear on how that was supposed to be done. So,
was there anybody that went around certifying those?
Nobody that I've met through the walk
Nobody
of life.
that I know
yeah,
of. And
yeah.
I'm around a lot of shops.
I think when they first built it. So when you look at them brand new and they come from the manufacturer, they get that plate on them and it's got all the proper language. So they wrote that into that regulation without really any consideration of, hey, what are we going to do down the road when that thing gets bent up where we got to replace it? And so yeah, I think
I don't know of anybody that does that.
Yeah, I think they finally just realized that it was it wasn't.
And
needed.
is that something, if you were ever doing a roadside inspection, that you would look for that plate?
Yeah, well, inspectors are by the book. I mean, letter of the law. So
if they've got a nice beefy ICC bumper and it's never been hit,
there are enforcement officers that would be like, it says under paragraph 86, it's got to have a DOT spec plate. I'm going to write it up. Me personally, no, I never did during my enforcement days. But there's a lot of things that I felt were good points to, like, the regulation says this, but do I really need to write them up for that? And I would have that conversation. And even back in the days when I was the training coordinator, we'd bring all the officers back for their annual certifications where they have to go through an 8-hour annual training to keep their certification. I would always have like a list of violations that we'd start getting complaints on, and people were like, are we sure we have to have that? And I'd address it, and I'd call them the chicken shit violations. And I remember one of the state port of entry officers stood up in the back of the room and wanted to know when I was going to put out my list of chicken crap violations, essentially. And I just kind of looked at him and said, well, I think it's common sense. Like, use your brain. But, here's the thing. Enforcement officers are, they've the letter of the law. That's what they enforce. And, that's just kind of the name of the game when it comes to DOT. But, CSA.
So what happens to a driver? Let's say he's got the power unit.
Mm-hmm.
Drops his trailer in, I don't know, we'll say New York. Drops it there, needs a backhaul to Colorado or LA or whatever. And some guy says, I've got a trailer that needs to go to LA.
Mm-hmm.
Take my trailer. But it doesn't have a proper ICC bumper. Guy gets pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? Who takes the hit for that? Because it's not his trailer.
Yeah.
But he is responsible for it. He is towing it.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like?
Well, that affects the driver. It goes against the driver. It goes against the company safety rating. So
when you say against the driver, the FMCSA score?
Yeah. So when they get pulled over and they get written up, especially with trailer interchange, whenever you're hooking up to different trailers, as soon as you pull that down the road, you're the motor carrier. So even though you're not the one necessarily responsible for the maintenance, when you drive it, you are required to be satisfied that all the parts and accessories are in good working order. So you're going to take the hit for it. And that's a really good point, because there's so many times that I look at safety profiles with companies that we're doing internal audits on, or we're trying to help them with their scores. And it's like you go through the violations and it's, trailer. All the violations come from those trailers, but it's from the interchange. Yeah, they're the ones that take the hit for it, even though they're not the ones necessarily doing the maintenance on it.
I guess I just asked that because part of the reason is, well, maybe we ask it this way. I've used trucks from the lot. This is in the past. I haven't done this with Rush, but in the past places I've worked, somebody needs a trailer moved, and I go pick it up, and it's a rat.
Yeah,
It's got the old Dayton 5 spokes on it.
Oh, boy.
The old Missouri Wobblers. And most of them have air in the tires. And they just need it moved because it's going to be a storage trailer. So I just took a truck off the lot and put a dealer tag in it and moved it for them. No, not for hire. I didn't take any money for it or anything like that. We just moved the trailer. that could get kind of sticky now looking back that I've got a dealer plate running a truck that I didn't own on a very non-DOT trailer.
Yeah. And if you were to get pulled over or put out of service, it'd be a strike against you personally on your CSA score. So remember, the driver's scores maintained for 3 years. So when the insurance companies pull the cab reports, when they pull on driver stats, 3 years of history is going to show on that. Okay, so you could get red flag.
So I could have got dinged, and that would have stayed with me
for 3 on your DOT record, which is different than your MVR. It's not going to affect your MVR. So it won't affect your personal insurance, but your commercial insurability, yeah, it sure can. And the companies, I mean, it's a strike against the company for 2 years. So yeah, it's it's a big deal. The only setup out there that where the violations that are on the piece of equipment follow the piece of equipment. I mean, the driver's still going to take a violation for driving it when it's broken, but so will the actual owner of the equipment, and that's going to be the intermodal container chassis. So those the Connex box trailers, they each have their own number on them. So when enforcement pulls those over, they're going to record whoever the equipment provider number is that's supposed to be on that trailer. And then that way, those violations will follow them, because some of those trailers they just disappear, into the fleet, and you wonder who's doing maintenance. So because they were kind of getting lost, the feds many years ago said, well, we need to start wrangling these in. If you put a trailer into circulation, you need to track it and still make sure you're doing your maintenance, because you'd have those intermodal equipment trailers that would be out there. Talk about with what you call them, the Missouri Wobblers. Yeah. Well, you'd see those older trailers and all that kind of thing. So that old Dayton axle, it was fun. The old spokes. Yeah. So it is an issue, and I would say that companies do struggle with that. So good point. Good point. All right, I got one more for you, Keith. One more. Now, this might actually been one of the topics, because this is not one that I used to write up. I've got a lot of heartburn, and I've had heartburn. And a lot of my heartburn with this regulation that has now been repealed has been because of the way some of the enforcement officers treated it. And that is going to be under 393.95, your emergency equipment. So the original rule required 3 pieces of emergency equipment. It required you to have a fire extinguisher, at least a 5 BC rating. If you're hazmat, a 10 BC rating. It required you to have 3 bidirectional triangles. And if you were using fuses, instead you had to have 6 fuses, or we should say fusees. And then, or flares, I think normal people might. I guess it depends what part of the country you're from. But then the third part of it, this is the part that I disagreed with it, is going to be the spare fuses. So the requirement is, and has always been until now, that you had to have at least 1 spare fuse for every type of fuse that was in the truck. So with that being said, you'd get an inspector that would get up in the cab, they'd reach to the back of the CB, they'd pull out the little fuse that was in the CB, and it was one of those other ones. Say, okay, do you have one of these, a spare one of these? And they'd get written up for not having that spare fuse. Right? I know Keith is making a scrunched up face right now. And to me, I'd say that, I'd find that chicken shit. I'm like, that's BS. It's not safety. It doesn't affect the way it's not going to affect that truck going safe down the road if his CB is not working, that kind of thing. But again, there were enforcement officers out there that did stuff like that. So, that kind of thing. So this next one is going to be the removal of the spare fuse rule, which is absolutely fantastic. So the amending of this, again, it came out in February 19th, was they're going to amend 393 and 95. The paragraph B is going to be removed and reserved, and that is the spare fuses. So that is now a regulation of the past. The spare fuses are out. Drivers don't need to worry about having a little fuse box. I would caution drivers, because it's going to take enforcement a while to get this one figured out. So don't just run out to your truck and pull them out. It's going to take enforcement officers to kind of catch up. Some of them get more training than others. But if you do catch a violation, this is going to be a good, easy data cue to get one pulled out. So no longer required to have spare fuses. So, that's, I think, a good thing.
Yes.
And, I've been getting a lot of questions with the new trucks, and you can maybe speak to this, is they have circuit breakers
Correct.
So basically you just have to reset it if it pops, I'm assuming.
Correct. And one of the option codes I have that I can select is auto reset.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So something will shut down, and then how does that work? Do you just power the truck down?
I'm not sure exactly. That's a good question. I'll find out.
I didn't give you a heads up on that
but
topic.
Auto reset circuit protection is one of the option codes.
Okay.
I'm assuming the other, I'm sure Kenworth has it because Pete and Kenworth are both PACCAR.
Yeah.
But I would assume the other OEMs would also have it.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know, it's like an $8 or $10 charge for auto reset circuit protection. So I'm assuming you shut down, it resets, fires back up. And if it's still bad, it'll kick out,
Well, and just through the years working with drivers, I ask them a lot when I do my pre-trip and post-trip training with drivers, or when I got a group of drivers and this topic comes up. I ask them, hey, when's the last time you guys have replaced a blown fuse? And I get a lot of, I haven't done that in years. Yeah. And I can remember doing it when I was a kid, but I think just with technology and as good as things are wired today and as much protections that go in, you just don't see it as much anymore.
There's a lot of protections built in, and you can't go through these things with a test light anymore.
Yeah.
You can't just ground it and then start probing. You can't do that. You can in the fuse panel, we still have the blade fuses and things like that. You can still do it at that point. But you start poking wires and things, all these new trucks have what they call multiplexing. So one wire might do 2 or 3 different things. So you can't just tie into that because it's hot, or it's hot when the ignition's on, so we're good. No, don't do that. Okay. You are going to cause all kinds of problems in your truck.
Yeah.
So you need to let somebody, because they've got a ECM, which is your engine control module. You got your VECU, which is your vehicle control module. You got your TCU. You've got about a half a dozen high-end, very expensive computers on these trucks. So you can't don't be doing your own wiring and just tapping in to wherever you think it'll work.
Wow.
They have specific spots where you can get into these harnesses, and you need to know where those are and what they do. Bodybuilder handbook. Peterbilt publishes a bodybuilder handbook so that you're putting a dump body on or a roll off or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's specific spots you need to tie into.
Okay.
So yeah, but that has eliminated, like you said. Oh, I blew a circuit. Oh, that fuse is blown. A lot of that's gone.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I behind the wheel experience for me, that's not my forte. So, but like I said, just talking with drivers, it seems like that was a kind of becoming an archaic rule. And, of course, there's enforcement people that ask for it religiously every time. So I would tell everybody, just because it wasn't something I personally took upon myself to enforce, that doesn't mean that there's not somebody out there. So we talk about DOT, like I said, if it's written in black and white ink in that book, there are officers that are going to write it up. So, when I teach my periodic inspection training for techs, I always ask when I get to conspicuity, and it says you got to have 50% of the side. And I asked them, I said, now, do you think the DOT measures it? Like if you decide to go and spread the conspicuity tape out and go a 24-inch strip of red, white, a 24-inch gap, 24-inch strip, and I says, you do the whole side. I says, do you think the DOT is going to measure that? And it's unanimous usually around the room. They all shake their head no. And I was like, no. They will. There are officers out there that are going to measure it. They're going to do the math. And if it's not 50%, they're going to write you up. So I says, that tape is expensive. So you wouldn't be the first of anybody to figure out and say, well, if I did a 24-inch strip and a 36-inch gap and a 24-inch strip, and save a little bit of extra money on that red, white tape, you know what? You're going to take a violation if it does not calculate out to 50%, because yes, the DOT officers will measure that if they think it's not 50%. So, that's just the name of the game. They get paid to be nitpicky. They're not out there handing out daisies.
Yeah.
So they're most definitely going to be doing that. So that's kind of my truck around and find out topic. But yeah, trust me, that if they can ride it, they're going to figure out a way to ride it.
Yeah.
So I get complaints. People call in complaining about DOT all the time, and I'm just like, well, I'm looking at your truck contact report, and I'm like, they're not wrong, and so we can complain,
Yep.
but it's written in black and white. You're not going to win the data queue, so and try to fix that. Don't do that again. So, anyways, well, Keith, that's what I got for today. You got anything else you want to throw in there?
Nope, I'm good.
You're good, fantastic. Well, I guess with that, I'd say thank you all for tuning in, and have a great week, and be safe. Thank you for what you do, and let's keep our shiny side up out there.
God bless you guys.